Bonjour à tous.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start meeting 159 of the Standing Committee on Industry and Technology pursuant to the order of reference for Wednesday, November 30th, 2022. We are here looking at Bill C-288, an act to amend the Telecommunications Act, Transparent and Accurate Broadband Services. This is a meeting that's taking place, as you know, in hybrid format, pursuant to the House Order of June 23rd, 2022. Here to speak to us about his bill, Bill C-288, we have the Honourable Member for Dauphin Swan River Nipawin, Mr. Dan Masier. Thank you for being with us. And with no further ado, I'd like to give you the floor. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank the committee for inviting me to discuss my private member's bill, Bill C-288. As you know, Bill C-288 passed second reading with unanimous support. I was proud to see us come together, but put politics aside and put consumers first in an important issue for Canadians. As I've said before, many Canadians, especially those living in rural, remote, and Indigenous communities, don't feel they are receiving the internet speeds and quality they are paying for. The speeds that customers see when they go to purchase an internet speed are not guaranteed speeds. They are rarely minimum speeds or average speeds. Instead, internet companies advertise maximum theoretical speeds. Words such as up to are used in these advertisements and lead consumers to believe that an internet service is better than it is. So technically, Canadians receive what they pay for as long as their speeds are lower than the maximum theoretical speed. But this information does not accurately reflect the service quality that potential consumers can expect. That's why it is no surprise that the data released by the Canadian Internet Registration Authority revealed that only 1/3 of Canadians believe their household receives the up-to speed included in their home internet package all or most of the time. Bill C-288 addresses this by providing potential customers with accurate and transparent information, a concept we can all get behind. The first pillar of this legislation will mandate internet companies to provide Canadians with typical download and upload speeds, not just maximum theoretical speeds. Instead of providing customers with best-case scenarios, let's give them a realistic expectation so they can decide if a service fits their needs and their budget. Secondly, this legislation will provide Canadians with quality metrics during a time when they are most likely to use the service. Of course, service quality will be better when no one is using the internet, but knowing the speeds at 7 p.m. is more relevant than knowing the speeds are at 3 o'clock in the morning. And finally, this legislation will initiate a consultation process that allows industry, advocacy groups, and public develop a model in the public's best interest. Canadians need to trust the information given to them. These proposals will help close the gap between what Canadians expect to receive and what they actually receive. And for those who say these decisions should be entirely left to the CRTC and policy directives, I say that the issues relating to connectivity are too important to be kept away from legislators. Yes, there are technical aspects to be left to the regulator, as Bill C-288 does. But I believe we, as parliamentarians, have a duty to improve connectivity for Canadians. And this includes legislating clear guidelines and requirements on this matter, as Bill C-288 does. The proposals in this bill are not new and have been successfully implemented in other countries. Since my bill was introduced, the United States Federal Communications Commission announced that they will mandate a broadband service label, an initiative that reflects the content of Bill C-288. This was a direct result of a legislated bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Australia implemented clear standards for advertising with typical speeds during peak periods. And in the United Kingdom, internet service providers state that the average speed that at least 50% of their customers receive during the highest usage hours. I think we can all agree that more competition is needed in our telecom sector. And to improve competition, we must allow Canadians to compare accurate information. In closing, I want to remind the committee that in June of 2021, this committee published Report 7 and recommended the following, and I quote, that the CRTC require internet service providers to make information available to consumers on the usual download and upload speeds they can expect during peak periods so they can make informed purchasing decisions based on accurate and transparent information, thereby improving the industry's competitiveness overall. Not one party dissented on this report. The committee now has the opportunity to act on the recommendation and codify it into law. Canadians deserve to know what they are paying for. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mazier. Much appreciated. And we'll now start the discussion with MP Perkins for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Mazier. In helping all of us understand the purpose of this bill, and myself as well, one of the things I did was I actually went to the websites of the internet service providers, the big guys, Rogers, Bell, TELUS, to try and find out how do they market this. So I think this is obviously what you're trying to get at. When I go to Rogers, they, for example, say on this 2.5 gigabyte package for $135 a month, they say up to 2.5 Gbps download speed. And when I go further on to their other packages, the lesser cost, they say up to 500 megabytes speed. And so I went to Bell's, and on Bell's, they use similar but different terminology. All through all of their various options, they say maximum speed, and TELUS does the same. So first of all, it requires a basic understanding for a consumer of what the heck that means at that speed, which I'm not sure most average everyday people do, but it does impact the price that they're charging. And then secondly, it's a maximum probably in a perfect world sort of speed. So is this what you're trying to get at, the fact that they market, the telephone or internet companies market using terminologies like up to, which is sort of saying almost or perhaps?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to get at. This bill directly talks about in the legislation, each clause, that it addresses this idea around up to speeds and makes language much more clear that they have to CRTC has to define actually what speeds, what can consumers expect. Typical upload and download speeds, not to up to speeds. Because really, when you stop and think about it, 1 is below 10, right? If 10 is supposed to be the number, you're supposed to be up to 10, but 1 is acceptable according to that contract and according to that wording. That is exactly what we're trying to get away from, so consumers can make an informed decision.
So yeah, the up to could be anything from 0 to that level, which means that they're charging you increasingly amounts of money, but really have no commitment to meet that speed level.
Correct.
When you know, in the past, we used to see on the Trans-Canada Highway maximum and minimum speeds. We even used to advertise that on the highway when you're driving, but it doesn't appear anywhere that I can find that they say, well, you know, you can expect between this and this speed, but, you know, in a perfect world, there's this speed. Have you looked at the idea that there should be some minimums in these packaging, or how do you see that working?
I think just simply telling consumers what they're buying. I think that would go a huge step forward in Canada here. But when I tell people, when I go out and talk about this bill, people can't believe that this is actually legal in Canada. They can actually sell you a service in theory. So I was racking my brains last night trying to figure out where else in the world that you would buy this kind of service. Can you imagine going up to a gas station and saying, okay, I'm going to get up to 50 liters, and then you only end up with 35? Yeah, you paid for it. That was what the language said, and you agreed. Yeah, I'm going to get up to 50 liters. This is the same kind of thing we're talking about. It's very misleading, and it's time the Canadian industry stepped up and started doing what they can do.
The only comparable I would have to that perhaps is theoretical gas mileage on your car, which seems to be, when I read about the telephone and the internet companies, they seem to be operating the same way with a theoretical thing. And I've heard that they'll push back and say, well, one of the reasons we can't do that is because we're not in control of the kind of rotor you have, or we're not in control of the number of people that are on at one time, and so they've got a lot of dog ate my homework type of excuses as to why they're not delivering that. Do you are you hearing that too? That, well, that's a perfect world. What is? Do we know anything about what is the sort of average or normal speed that you would get in a normal household on these packages, or do we even have that kind of information for consumers?
Well, this is the other part that this bill addresses, right? They have to report it to the consumer, to the user. Right now, they report that information to ISED, but they don't report it to the actual user or the person buying that service. So this is what this bill gets at. They have to actually say, here's what you could expect, the average, even if it's the average speed, during peak hours, during typical, what are the expected typical upload and download speeds at peak hours. That's if a consumer was armed with that information, they could clearly decide what kind of service they need.
So if I'm a Rogers customer buying this 2.5 gigabyte package at $135 a month, that's a lot of money a month, I should be able to expect 2.5 gigabytes of speed. Is that your contention? Whenever I need and use that?
If it does it have upload and download speed? Like it says upload is 10 or 50 or 2.5 or whatever the number you're referring to?
Yeah, it would have an upload and download options, and well, that's what, when they market it that way, that's what I should expect, but it isn't necessarily what I get.
Correct. It's when it's good for them.
So I might be paying $135 a month and getting an $89 a month package, essentially.
And that is where we talk about the clear language, and so consumer is informed with that decision. Maybe they don't need that much service, right? So this is it helps on what price point or how much data or how much speed do they actually need for their usage.
Great.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur Fillmore, la parole est à vous.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to Mr. Fillmore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Major, for joining us today and for the hard work that you've put into this bill. I think we all understand the hours that it takes and the conversations and the collaboration, so thank you for all of that. I wanted just to start, I'm sure you know that earlier this year, Minister Champagne announced a policy direction to the CRTC that has a lot of similar attributes to your bill. For example, the policy direction, it's a binding policy direction. It covers a range of issues to put in place new rules to improve competition, to enhance the rights of consumers and their access to information, to speed up the deployment of high-quality broadband networks, promote lower prices, better services, and specifically, the direction also requires the CRTC to implement broadband performance testing requirements. So I'm just wondering if you could sort of characterize the coexistence or the overlap or any conflict between the two, between the policy direction and your bill.
Yeah, well, and the problem with the policy directive, it doesn't go far enough. There is no mention of typical download and upload speeds. That is a huge issue, as Mr. Perkins has just exhibited, that consumers need that information to make an accurate decision. And also, the directive doesn't mention about public hearings, and that's a very important part of this bill. It's an opportunity for industry, for consumers, and even the CRTC to get together as a group of users on the subject of internet service providers in this country that will actually offer, maybe elevate the discussion into for Canadians and for the consumer ultimately. So ultimately, while the policy directive is it a good step in the right direction, it doesn't go far enough, and it doesn't legislate it. Like whatever the CRTC and whatever industry decides, these are just directions, and I think it's too important a subject to really leave it to industry to figure it out. If this could have been figured out, or if they would have stepped up before, this would have been all done. You wouldn't have, the government wouldn't have had to put in a directive, and we wouldn't have to be talking about this today. The bill would have been fixed. But that's the fundamental problem with the directive.
It's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because when you put something in legislation, it becomes very rigid, and it's difficult and time-consuming to make changes, especially in a bill that that has to do with a very rapidly evolving industry. It kind of seems to me at first read that a policy directive has that nimbleness, that ability to change and react to I mean, the AI is coming barreling at us, and God knows what's going to happen when quantum arrives. So I have sympathy. I'm sympathetic to the notion of a policy directive being more nimble. But if you wanted to respond to that, I'd love to hear you. Yeah.
Legislation as well, it does have a clause, I think it's 3 something in there, but it's about exemptions. And it does talk about that nimbleness, because we didn't want to handcuff the industry or the CRTC or the discussions. We don't know what kind of technologies are in there, but are coming at us, right? Like you said, the AI, it's amazing what is actually coming to us for connectivity. But fundamentally, every Canadian, I ask, should know what kind of service they are buying at the end of the day. And the directive does not go far enough. When we put it in legislation, it's ironclad, and it's a very clear signal by parliamentarians, by the House of Commons, that are saying this is important to Canadians. And you know what, industry, let's get it together and let's do this. And then CRTC, they have very clear directions of what they can do too.
You, I want to sort of go a little bit into the reaction of industry to your bill. So I started by saying you've done a lot of conversations with folks. How would you characterize the reaction of industry? And did they talk about this sort of, I'm going to use the word again, nimbleness, this reactivity?
Well, we consulted with different professionals and then tech experts around this. Industry, of course, industry being industry, they're not going to, they have to change all of a sudden and they got to report something else. I don't think it looks very good for them when they're saying, well, we don't have to tell consumers what kind of service we're selling them. Why is that? How is that, making them a worse service? They are one of the most expensive services in all the world for when it comes to telecommunications. They got a little bit of room to work on. And I think if we put this kind of language in there, I think that the sheer fact that now the consumer's getting clear information and they can actually decide on that information, that it in itself would instill more competition and hopefully at the end of the day drive down the price for the consumer.
Okay. So you've just now been talking about the content or the impact of the bill, but I want to come back, if I could, to this flexibility piece and sort of query you on your receptivity. If this committee comes up with some proposed amendments that would help the bill to be more reactive to changes as they come, how receptive are you to the idea of amendments?
I'm open to amendments that would make the carriers more accountable to what kind of service and make them more transparent to what kind of service they're selling Canadians. That's a kind of amendment I'd be open to.
So that's more about the kind of going back to the content of the bill, less so about the flexibility or the ability for the bill to evolve responsively, quickly.
Well, and part of the process too, when we get into the hearing process, when the CRTC actually launches these hearings process, that's where the opportunity is to be flexible as well. There's lots of latitude in this. It is a discovery process to figure out how internet service providers are going to display or transmit their services for Canadians. So this is what this bill does. It's different, again, back to the policy directive path kind of thing. And of course, the other thing, it's a very transparent process as well. The directive policy, it did come from government. It came from cabinet, right? It's a few people in the back room saying, here, this is a good idea. Look at this, and then they have a headline, right? This is legislation. We are all accountable for this as the House of Commons. And I think, personally, I've heard very positive feedback from the smaller internet service providers. Interestingly enough, more positive feedback for them because it takes that noise away, right? It all of a sudden they basically called it false advertising, but they can be very transparent and certain of what service they are offering as the smallest internet service provider, which might be lots especially in rural and sparsely populated areas. So it does actually level the playing field for not only the consumer but also the industry as well.
Okay.
You are right, Mr. Fillmore. Thank you very much. Monsieur Lemire, la parole est à vous.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Mazier, and I'm happy to see you here before the committee today. As you know, this committee adopted a report talking about the affordability of telecommunication services in Canada and supporting communication. It was in 2021, and there were several colleagues around the table who were also on the committee at the time. And that was influenced by the first version of your bill. I had made a proposal that was adopted at the time that was by colleagues, and it said that the CRTC should require Internet service providers to make information on upload and download speed and usual speed, customary speed for peak periods. That should be made available to consumers so that they can make an informed decision based on transparency. And this would help to improve the situation in the industry. So I'd like you to comment on that recommendation, if you will. And are you satisfied with the answer that you got from the government following the adoption of that motion?
Well, I guess if we thank you very much for pointing that out, and that's exactly what I was referring to. That was the first iteration of my bill at 288, I believe, so or 299. The committee did see the importance of that, and it's the typical upload and download speeds. I think that's a very important thing to remember, and the committee nailed it. They did say, look at government, you need to look at this. Unfortunately, this government chose to go down the policy directive type of way. Industry did not step up and say, hey, we got a problem here. And so here we are, we're back here introducing legislation. And I do honestly believe that legislation is the way to go. It is more transparent. I think it's a chance for all us as parliamentarians to really wrap our arms around and to tell the Canadian people this is important to Canadians, and we recognize that. We don't do that enough here, and we like this whole non-partisan, and we get kind of stuck into these different conversations that, trap us. But this is one I think Canadians are really hoping that we pay attention to, especially when it comes down to the transparency and what actually service you are being offered, and you get that service at the end of the day.
Mais justement, en ce sens-là, en vertu.
So then, when you look at Section 37 of the Telecommunications Act, they are required to provide information with respect to the speed of download speeds and upload speeds. So that information is already available, and it would be quite simple, probably, to provide that information to their clients. I'd like to hear you explain to us how it works. Is it as simple as it appears to be? Do the telecommunications companies really have that document, and could they bill based on the upload and download speeds?
Well, they could, but they choose to put language in like up to. It's very misleading. It's, average. I think Mr. Perkins referred to another word that they use, and that is the problem. We need to get rid of that language. What is the typical or the average speed you can expect at peak periods? That would be the ideal, right? Like, when you want the internet and you're paying for a service and good money for that service, you expect that service to work. And meanwhile, you've got this other little clause that says up to speeds, and you know what? Joe down the road needs it a little bit more than you, or someone over there that we're going to control it a little bit more. So you don't get to get on and talk to your kids tonight, or you don't get to go on that course that you say you're in a remote area and you're trying to better yourself. Those are the kind of things that they're stopping by not addressing what kind of speeds you can expect while you're using it.
Mais c'est très clair que la technologie.
Well, clearly the technology exists to bring the industry into line then the way you want it to be.
They report, this is the ironic thing, they report this information to ISED every year on their management. Like, they ask for it and they say, here it is, but they don't tell the consumer. This is the real ironic thing about this. Like, and I don't know how a telecom company can sit here and say, well, we don't have to. I don't understand that.
Nous avons déjà eu des échanges.
We've had some discussions on this topic, especially when it comes to the impact of services in rural areas. announcements are made with respect to up to speeds and whatnot, but the quality of service isn't good. Like we've got Videotron back at home, and we're one of the regions that paid the highest cost for the worst service in the country. So how will your bill bring answers, provide some answers to either improve competitiveness in resource regions, as we call them in Quebec, or more rural regions, and to bring rates down for the benefit of consumers?
Anytime you can signal to a consumer what actually service they're buying, like you might realize that, hey, 50/10 is fine. You don't need 100 by 100. So is that cheap? Is that a cheaper service? But the problem is you don't even know what you're buying yet, and you don't know when it's being controlled. You don't know what to expect. So it's like a game of Russian roulette, right? Like if you just don't, you do not have the information to make that informed decision. So when you do, you'll be able to make that decision, and you might not pick the highest package because it's so expensive, or you just simply don't need it. And when you're looking at different countries and that, it's quite interesting how they pan it all out and say, if you're a gamer, you need this. If you need you're just talking on Netflix in the evening watching movies, that's what you need. So there are ways of doing it. The industry describes it all the time. So it is there, and they just have to start doing it.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Lemire. Mr. Massé, you go ahead. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to MP Mazur for bringing this forth. A couple of things to note with regards to the policy directive. I think you highlighted a little bit of it, but it really is subjective to any minister that actually provides that directive at any point in time, and then the interpretation of the CRTC for such a simple, information that should be provided. I don't understand why it's difficult, but maybe you can kind of impress upon the concerns about letting that vagrancy exist when really people should just know what they're getting and know what they buy.
And that's a very good question. The more I go over this, I don't understand why they're just not simply providing this information when they do to the CRTC and everybody like that. Really, fundamentally, we need a consumer needs for information the typical download and upload speeds, which is bill directs. But it's the legislation part of it and the actual clearly directing the CRTC of what they need to do. And then the other part of this as well is that the part of the public hearings process and listening and working with industry and working with consumers to understanding their needs. Like one of the biggest complaints we hear about is, of course, cost, but also service. Like people just want to get the service. Like Canadians, and there's nothing more frustrating to that. And I think setting expectations, if you are in rural and remote areas, well, what are those expectations? They won't look the same as an infrastructure in downtown or some suburban, highly populated area, but what do they actually look like factually, not just theoretically? And this bill will address that, and those conversations will be forced in legislation.
And I think that part of this we have to understand is that when you're making a purchase point decision for higher speed, it could be because you, for example, make your living either through moving information quicker, faster, and it's an investment. Even if you look at electronic gaming, I mean, it's a huge industry. In fact, there's a South Korean cabinet minister for just e-gaming alone, and people are making a life and a living off of that. And there's even college courses and at St. Clair College here in Windsor and other places where they compete internationally and so forth. And so then you would actually cross that into like my area, the tool and die mold making sector, other places where they want to actually purchase the best service possible for not only just the business, but also when they work from home. So doesn't it seem like a counterproductive move to not allow people to have the right to be fully informed about how they want to invest and what they want to spend their money on?
Yes, I completely agree. Like this. And counterproductive is a good word, Mr. Massey. I just when they get found out, when the industry actually, like, there is a simple fix to this. Just tell Canadians what kind of service you're offering. It's that easy.
Yeah, and
you know.
And I guess one other quick question I have is, highlight is that the FCC, and this is interesting because I've often, said as consumers, Canada is treated as a colony when it comes to some of the large corporations and information we get from the United States and other companies. You look at the auto sector where we are actually in full regulation compliance with regards to safety, maintenance, emissions, and at the same time, when they have recalls, a good example is the Prius and Toyota recalls, where consumers benefit way more, and even they actually had investment in their companies into the United States because they were treated as a different element. So I don't understand why we would expect Canadians to have less, especially if we're, getting the government saying that we can't, as example on 244, concerns over following CUMSA, and in the meantime, that we wouldn't actually have cross comparison and realities over here. Because that won't actually violate our trade obligations.
Part of the issue is, too, when you go down this policy directive, it really doesn't have any teeth, and at the end of the day, it's up to the CRTC to move it forward. So there's really no clear direction, and this is part of the reason why we end up with policies in Canada like this, right? We figure the government just washes their hands and done. As a parliamentarian, I am. This is why I brought this bill forward, was to make clear direction that Canadians expect better, and parliamentarians expect more as well and better from our industries, and treat consumers better. So I am wholeheartedly agreeing with that. We need better legislation when it comes to this. What kind of internet service they are selling Canadians.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Williams, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Mazur, thank you for bringing this bill forward. I think it's a very important one. I think there's a couple lines that I've heard you talk about, and certainly that I've seen in some of the paperwork of this bill. And the most important one is to improve the connectivity for Canadians. And I think that's really important. I think all of us as parliamentarians have to agree that is our number one goal. Certainly as we see more advancement in the digital era of communications, I think everyone knows that they need internet now. It's essential. It's not just something that it's nice to have, you need to have it. And certainly some of the biggest problems we have in Canada are connectivity, making sure we have all Canadians connected to the internet. Second is that Canadians need the speeds to be able to go to school, to work, to just communicate as a whole, that be their cell phone or through the internet in some way. A word I know that you've used, and I want to reemphasize that, is trust. And it seems that when we look at trust, the number one side of it is looking at perhaps what you're talking about, which may be perceived as false advertising. So trust that when you're buying something, you're getting what you've paid for. The second part of that is trust through performance, meaning that we have to be able to trust that we can get the speeds we need to do the work or connect or watch TV or do anything that you're actually needing to essentially operate in this 21st century and beyond that. There are a lot of smaller internet providers that are trying to enter the space in Canada. We have a problem with competition, and certainly there is three companies for sure that do dominate the Canadian landscape. How would this bill impact smaller internet service providers?
It would level the playing field as far as when it comes to information of what kind of services companies are selling internet consumers. For example, right now we've talked about this up to speeds, right? So they can send a bunch of noise out there as a big corporation. They at some point in time can offer 10 by 50 sometime, whenever it works for them, whenever their infrastructure will allow it. Meanwhile, a smaller internet service provider might be, 8 by 40. And that might be all you need, but that's all they can really offer. And they can't signal that out to the consumer and tell the consumer, look, this is all you need. It's a pretty much of an uphill battle. You're saying, well, you don't need all that service. They might be the same price, but you don't need that much service, right? Like that's a pretty poor sales position. So this would actually take away a lot of the noise that the big guys or the big players are sending out right now, so the consumer can actually look at the real data instead of the theoretical data and decide what they actually need. And you were talking about trust and building that. This bill, we referred out to, I kind of alluded to them in my opening remarks about other countries. Australia's done, actually, they're probably the leader, global leader, as far as when it comes to connectivity or internet sort of regulations and legislation. But so they implemented original legislation and regulations 2017. They updated in 2019, and then they did an assessment back on really what were the results of the changing and making it more transparent, much like what we want to do here in C288. But overall, and this is from the report, overall the effectiveness of the report concludes that increased transparency resulted in internet service providers offering better quality services in addition to better consumer understanding of expected service performance.
I think that's my main point. Performance is really important. So to your point earlier, you could have a company advertising maximum speeds up to 50 megabytes. They might be only performing in 12 megabytes. Where I'm getting to also is in government, and we're looking at performance as well. And if the government's goals are 50 megabytes per second download, 10 upload, and yet some of these companies are only hitting 12 to 8, does that change perhaps also how the government views these companies, how we look at regulations, how we look at competition to ensure that we have as many players competing to provide the best speeds and service to customers as we can?
Well, the key to the competition is being transparent of what service you offer. If you're offering a bunch of smoke and mirrors, how does the consumer know even to make this? What market signal are you sending? Yeah, we got the best. We can do anything. We can sell up to those levels. I think this bill does enshrine it when we put it into legislation, an actually clear mandate that Canadians expect better from their industry.
Merci beaucoup. Monsieur Dong, la parole est à vous pour...
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. And first of all, I want to thank the member for bringing forward this bill and his persistent advocacy on more transparency on service providers fighting for the rights of consumers. But my first question is that if you're familiar with the CRTC's project called Measuring Broadband Canada, and if you do, what do you think of it?
What do I think of it?
Yeah, any thoughts on it?
It's not very good.
The purpose?
It doesn't satisfy the purpose at all for this. If you would talk about the CRTC report, and it's funny, the headlines when you first flush at this thing, like, look, there's no problems here with our issues, right? Like, we are all good industries. Everybody's getting the service they want. If you look deeper into what they sampled, there was only about 2,000 people, just over 2,000 people that were actually sampled. This only applied to fixed line, so people that internet service. So this would be like a person that has fiber to their house, or fixed wired, not cellular or not wireless. So that was the other little thing, which mostly rural Canada and are many times over as far as being wireless. But the biggest thing in this study was, and the biggest major flaw in it, it was only done in large urban centres, located in, it was right in the fine print, ironically enough, located in major Canadian metropolitan areas. So it has nothing to do with even suburbia. Like this report is not very good, in my opinion.
I get the point that it's not as inclusive as it could be. That's probably makes a point for your second part of your bill, which is calling for a more public hearing. I represent a urban area, if you will, and as you know, that a lot of areas in big urban centers like Toronto is undergoing a lot of growth. And when the population doubles and sometimes even triples, I can think of the downtown district, the requirement for a bandwidth sometimes doesn't get reflected or feedback to the service provider quick enough. I remember having a conversation with a technician on the street, and I said, how would you know? Like, whether the bandwidth is sufficient or not, given the growth of the population. He said we don't, like, we just depend on consumers to call back and tell us the disruptions and dissatisfaction with service, then we come back and run a test. So maybe with your bill, it'll help to better inform the consumers on what kind of service are they getting. Any comments on that?
Absolutely, it'd help out the consumer. It not only giving them accurate information on what kind of service they're buying, factual information, but the whole process around the hearing procedure and the CRTC actually performing that right across Canada here. I think we actually, I was looking back, it's hard to say, I don't think Canadians have ever been offered this kind of ability or opportunity to talk to industry. And obviously the CRTC hasn't had this kind of initiative either. In the U.S., for example, it is quite interesting. They're far ahead of us. They've implemented many of these conditions that what that C288 would do as well. Actually, and they just announced a major announcement of the FCC that was going to they're moving to more of a nutrition label sort of way, and this is kind of right here, but to explain to consumers. But there is lots of this FCC gets it in the U.S., and I think the CRTC. I would really be happy if the CRTC would wrap their arms around this legislation as they did in the U.S. and go with it, because I think consumers would win and Canada would win.
You just answered my next question, so I'll move on to, in your view, how the transparency will come about in practice. Are we talking about real-time updates on perhaps their website, or monthly updates on disruptions or whatnot? Like, after consulting with the industry, where do you think that the real world feedback will look like?
Well, they will come up with a set of criteria that Canadians need to make an informed decision of what kind of internet service they're buying. I think that is the biggest win for everybody. More transparency, and what are their options? Do they need that? So it's more of a, those hearings can be, the outcomes can be very, very positive if the CRTC and if the industry decides to go down that path. But at least it'll be legislated. We know what the expectations are. It's very clear in the bill. And that's why it needs to be passed in legislation versus a policy directive.
In the development of your private members bill, I'm sure the industry engage you as well or provide their feedback. What's their feedback? What's their attitude towards your private members bill?
Depending if they're a smaller player, they're actually quite in favor of this. There's finally going to be someone's talking about these misleading statements about up to. When you talk to the bigger players, it's a mixed bag. They're going to look at it. With someone, anytime you're in industry and you're the controller part of it, like, would they positively look at change of being more accountable? I don't know how they can take it. They can take it any way they well please, but I think Canadians expect them to be more accountable and more transparent in what kind of service they're providing. And like I say, as I've mentioned before, in numerous conversations I've had, people at times don't believe me that this is actually legal in Canada.
Right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dong. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
and
Chair.
Mr. Mazier as well. Monsieur Lemire pour 2 minutes 30.
Mr. Minier, you've got the last couple of minutes. Well, I just have one question for Mr. Mazier. I'd like to know the comparative study that you did with other studies. Did you use any legislation that may come from the UK, Australia, the EU, in order to prepare your bill? And how was it received? How successful were the similar bills, ones that are similar to yours? How successful were they?
Thank you for the question. And yes, Australia, as I was mentioned before, is probably the industry leader, our world leader, when it comes to regulations and not so much forcing telecoms to be transparent, but actually setting up a a process of where consumers and everybody benefits from it, and it's very consumer focused. So Australia, they had this whole process. They introduced this regulations in 17, 19, and then they actually reviewed it. And I did read from it before, but the report, and this is, and I think I read this before, but according to the ACC's report, an effectiveness of policy, the changes have promoted more competitive and efficient markets for supply of broadband services. So that's what they're, even like 5 years after the changes and all that, the report that bills changes like the C288 would implement would be very positive. So that's in Australia. In the U.S., they've actually done some really work and very quickly. So what happened there? They passed legislation. Their regulator, the FCC down there, CRTC up here, they grabbed a hold of it, and they've had 2 hearings, 2 round sessions with it. They're progressing very quickly. And here's just some of the statements out of the commission. Broadband nutrition labels, so they've gone to a nutrition label type of way, are designed to make this it's simpler for consumers to know what they are getting, hold providers to their promises, and benefit from greater competition, which means better service and prices for everyone. So this is that was from the chairwoman, Jessica Rosenworcel. And this on the affordability. This was, I fully expect that this transparency will increase competition and hopefully result in lower prices for consumers. FCC Commissioner Jeffrey Starks. Those kind of statements are coming out of a regulator. I don't know, I can't imagine the CRTC holding up a piece of legislation and saying this is what this legislation will do, when in fact C288 could result in the same thing. I would be very pleased to see that kind of stuff come out of it. But this is the potential that C288 has, and other countries have recognized that. And I think it's time for the Canadian government to step up, and us as MPs endorse this, pass this bill, and so we can get to work on it.
Est-ce que c'est une question qu'il fallait vous poser, que vous étiez prêt?
Well, I had to ask you the question. I see we were prepared to answer it, so thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Lemire. Mr. Massey, you've got 2.5 minutes.
Just a quick question with regards to, the frustration I think consumers have is that you have, buying, I don't know what's worse, a car and understanding the warranty, life insurance policy, or your internet broadband service and phone service. This, I guess, process that is being proposed now is going to still have some more public component and involvement. Is that not correct? I just want to clarify that to ensure that, again, this is actually opening the door for more opportunity to understand the situation. And with that, that's my last question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, this bill would definitely, there's a public hearings component of it with the CRTC, basically refereed by the CRTC. They handle it, but they go out and do public hearings where they consult with the public, NGOs, anybody that wants to comment on it, but as well as industry. So this is where you get into these technicalities. And, we could have written a bill that was like very technical, and it wouldn't have done much good, because there are aspects of our internet, of our connectivity in this country that we as legislators don't understand. It's not really, quite frankly, our job to understand how the inner workings work of it, but it is our job to make good legislation for Canadians. And I think C288 and the steps that go through this would definitely provide better service for Canadians at the end of the day, and more transparent service, so all can benefit.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Massé. Monsieur Généreux.
Thank you very much, Mr. Massé. We'll go to Mr. Généreux. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleague, Mr. Mazier. Thank you for being here today. As my colleague said, I always forgot his name. I always forget his name. I'm sorry about that. Mr. Lemire, as he said, in Quebec, we've got situations that affect the regions where, and I see it at home in my riding as well, depending on where we are vis-a-vis the service provider, the connectivity or the speed that we get, the quality of service can really vary greatly. And as you said, Now, I know my bill is about $150 a month. I find that huge. I don't have a landline at home. It's just internet and TV, and the TV is very limited. But at any rate, the bill is primarily for internet. And when I check it, the speeds are inconsistent. Now, this is being sold as advertised as a constant speed that I should be receiving, but it's not what I'm receiving. So I'm indirectly informed of this, of my service provider, because sometimes we can't even download some things as simple as pictures or photos. So your bill, essentially, would make it possible to obtain this information. Now, some companies are not apparently open to your bill. I don't know if it's because there's a lack of transparency, they don't want to provide the information, or they feel a bit threatened by your bill. I'm not sure if you've had any contact with telecommunications companies across Canada that have analyzed your bill specifically.
I've talked to them. They've talked to me about my bill. I guess we'll go about that way. And I think they're waiting. I believe they're coming to committee here, and I think it's a good question for them. I don't understand how like if an internet service provider is sitting in front of you and they're not telling you what kind of service they're offering you. What is that? Like how can they justify that and sit here and say, well, that's okay for us? Like that isn't acceptable for Canadians. You wonder why people are so mad at the telecoms industry. I think this is actually a very good opportunity for the telecoms industry to build some trust, to build those bridges back with.
Well, I'd like to play the devil's advocate and put myself in the shoes of a telecommunications company, depending on the volumes and what's at the end of the street or whatever. Maybe the service won't be exactly the same as if you're at the start of the line, for example. If there's 7, remember back in the day when there were 7 on the same line, on a telephone line, and the service wasn't the same in all places. But if we get an answer like that, well, what do you think the fact that because they're selling us a product for a certain price that's supposed to be Y, but it varies based on the global or comprehensive demand on their services. Well, how do you answer that? What do you say about that? Or what do you think they're going to tell us about that?
The information. They were reporting this information to the CRTC anyways. All they have to do is tell the consumer. That's all they have to do. And it's not like this when we first started down this path of this bill, that was the first kind of red flag that it was, we can't do this. This is too much information. It's not too much information. You provide it to the CRTC. And it will vary. I think Canadians are well aware that they know they're not going to get the same type of service or the same speeds in a rural area, but they want some service and they want to know what they're paying for.
À quelle fréquence pensez-vous que...
So how often do you think that companies should be required to report that information? Now, say on my bill, I pay $150, $200 a month for internet services, and it varies inevitably over that month period. Would it be at the end of the month that the company should say, well, we'll give you a discount because we weren't in a position to give you the service you paid for? Is that a possibility?
I'll read something from a statement from the chairwoman here. We are so they're borrowing from a model that's from the food products. Going forward, our rules will require a broadband nutrition labels are fully displayed when consumers is making a purchasing decision. That means consumers will have a simple, easy-to-read facts about price, speed, data allowances, and other aspects of high-speed internet service up front. Plus, by requiring this providers display an introductory rates clearly, we are seeking to end the kind of unexpected fees and junk costs that can get buried in along the mind-numbingly confusing statements of terms and conditions. So the U.S. is tackling this kind of these type of things. They see industry can do better, and they're telling them, get your act together. We need to do the same thing here in Canada. It starts with legislation like Bill C-288.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Généreux.
Thank you very much, Mr. Généreux. That concludes our rounds of questions.
Congratulations on moving forward with this private members bill. It's quite an accomplishment for any parliamentarian. So we appreciate you being here, answering our questions. And on this note, I'll suspend briefly for us to continue for the second hour. Thanks again, Mr. Messer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee.
welcome back, friends and colleagues. We're now entering the second hour of this meeting where we are to study Bill C-244, an act to amend the Copyright Act, diagnosis, maintenance, and repair. And as you know, it is due on Wednesday to be reported back to the House. So given the short time frame, I would seek the consent of the committee to agree to a motion asking for a 30-day delay for us to report back to the House. Is there unanimous consent for such motion? I see that there is. Okay. So it's duly recorded with the clerk. And on that, I recognize Mr. Fillmore.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks to our fellow committee members for agreeing to this extension of 30 days. I think it'll get us to a better product, and part of that I think is having an opportunity to ask some really probing questions of the officials from ISED that are here today. And so after some discussions with opposition members, I think there's also agreement that we would go in camera now rather than clause by clause for the remainder of today's hour, and to have a chance to have a really good, frank conversation with our officials. And I would move that.
Okay, so there is a motion to go in camera. Is there unanimous consent? There is. Great. So I will suspend so that we go in camera. So meeting suspended.
Thank you.